Welcome to the Daily Items Winter Sports Podcast, a weekly look at what's happening with the Susquehanna Valley's high school and college teams. From Bucknell and Susquehanna University men's and women's basketball to all the high school hoops, wrestling, swimming, and more, the Daily Items Sports Team has the latest on the players, coaches, and teams to watch. Now, here's your host, Daily Items Sports Editor, Kurt Ritzman.
Hello and welcome to our Winter Sports Podcast. I'm Kurt and I'm happy to be joined by Chris Nagy. We're going to talk a little wrestling to start off today's podcast.
So, great way to start the podcast off this week.
Sure. District duels on Saturday. The main event, at least, was Saturday. You were in Milton for the District 4 Class 2A duels. Give me some of your impressions from the day.
Southern cemented their place as a dynasty. Jim Roth and his staff has done an amazing job there.
Jerry Marks.
I'm not Jimmy. Yeah, Jerry Marks. I apologize.
Jim Roth has done an amazing job too as the football coach.
My column that'll be in Thursday's paper touches on the Jim Roth, Jerry Marks dynamic. So but Jerry has done an amazing job, and also Danville. When you get a mindset in a kid that hey, just go out there. Get some points. Get some bonus points. Pin. You're never out of a match. Mm-hmm. That mindset really carried them to that third place and put them back in the state tournament for the first time since 2005.
Yeah, good job for Danville on Saturday. Tough preliminary Monday. Went down to Newport, lost, but got a couple nice wins from some of their lower weights, especially.
Yeah, it was a tough draw for them, and it was a tough matchup. There was a couple other teams that if they would have. The bracket would have fell different ways. They would have been at Hershey on Thursday, but Newport was strong where Danville was weak, and there was no real toss-up. And I got to give kudos to Danville. I mean, it's nobody except for me really saw them making it there. So, and I was told that a lot during the district duels. Everybody thought I was crazy that I picked Danville third. I wasn't, but it was a great effort by those kids.
What are the chances that the 2A state final is not Southern Columbia versus Reynolds?
I would say there's about a 2% chance of that not happening. And the only way that will happen is if Brookville upsets Southern Friday morning.
Okay.
In the perceived quarterfinal. They wrestled 2 years ago for the third place match. Southern handled Brookville. There was a couple forfeits near the end because once you have that match, and then you see a lot of coaches just forfeiting and getting off the mat.
Sure.
And Jerry did that year. So that's where I think and I don't even see that happening. I think it's going to be Southern Reynolds. I think it's what we've all been waiting for. And I'm going with the Tigers this year. Last year I didn't, but this year I'm going with the Tigers. I think that what gives them the best possibility is just not the return of Gavin Garcia and Cade Lidd, but it's Lear Quinton and Shane Miller, two kids that you don't hear a lot, and Mike Miner. Mm-hmm. Those three kids are going to be in spots where they can steal points, and they steal points against. If two of those three kids win against Reynolds, I'm going to say it right now. If two of those three kids win against Reynolds, Southern Columbia is your team champ.
So you're saying steal points as win the match, not just don't lose by bonus points.
No, I think win the match. I mean, I think if two of those three can win matches, I think we have Southern Columbia winning their third, as a school, their third state title of the season.
Wow. Let's talk a little bit about Class 3A. Selinsgrove went out to Du Bois on Saturday, won the 4-9 district title. First district team duels wrestling title in program history. If you didn't get Wednesday's Daily Item, check it out. Chris has a nice story about how Selinsgrove voted not to go as a team 2 years ago, and then this year they went district champs. How do you see things going for them in Hershey this Thursday, Friday, Saturday, maybe?
Out of the many ways for their draw to fall, their draw fell the worst way for them because they got Northampton.
Okay.
The Concrete Kids, they got Northampton. Northampton lost to Becca. Northampton has won this a couple of times. Northampton is one of the stronger teams in District 11. Even Seth Martin, the head coach at Selinsgrove, said we're a realist. We're going to go in there. But he's going in with a great mindset. He's going to wrestle. He's going to take a full team down. He's going to take a full bus down. Every kid's going to get an opportunity to wrestle.
Wow.
He's going to get a lot of kids out there. He doesn't care if he goes 0-2, 1-2. He would love to come away with a medal.
Sure.
But he wants the experience for his kids, and you got to applaud that. But I see 1-2 for Selinsgrove. I see them losing to Northampton. I see them bouncing back and winning in the morning on Friday, and then losing in the third round of consolations Friday night.
Okay. So make sure to check out the Daily Item with all of Chris's state duels coverage. It's going to be real good.
And also Twitter will be live updating constantly on it, and it'll also be live on the website too.
Sure.
So we'll have it rolling all. So
quickly before we end our wrestling discussion for the week, I want to talk about a regular season duel Thursday night. So if you're not headed to Hershey, go to Lewisburg. Jim Snyder's final dual meet as the coach in a long storied career for the Green Dragons.
And the main reason I'm wearing the Lewisburg wrestling shirt today, as a homage to Coach Snyder, Jim Snyder is, if you want your kid to be coached, you want Jim Snyder to do it. He's one of the class acts. He does it right. Doc Brown, Dr. Michael Brown, Nathaniel Brown, his dad is an amazing human being, and they are hanging it up. They've been together for 25 years, coached for 24 years, took a year off. But I'll tell you something, those guys have done such an amazing job at that program. Lewisburg Wrestling is what it is today because of them. And I mentioned it in the story that'll be in the paper on Thursday. It's one of the most funny dynamics is a lot of people know Doc Brown in the area because he has delivered so many babies. And there's a line that Snyder uses all the time. Doc might have brought you into the world, but you're in my world now. And it's just they act like brothers. And I have a little history with Jim Snyder. His high school wrestling coach was my high school wrestling coach. We both hold Paul Stamen from Shamokin in highest regards and as a mentor to both of us. And it's going to be weird next year looking across the mat and seeing somebody else in that green instead of Jim Snyder. And it just shows the humility of Jim Snyder. Saturday before he started, he goes down in front of all press runners going, "Hi, Jim Snyder, Lewisburg wrestling coach. Hi, Jim Snyder." So the area is going to miss Jim Snyder.
So if you're not headed to state duels, make sure to go check that out if you're a wrestling fan. Thanks, Chris. We're going to take a little break and then come back and talk some basketball. Okay, welcome back. I'm joined by Scott Dudinskie. We're going to talk a little girls basketball. And Scott, you've had a pretty good week as far as games go so far, with it only being Wednesday. Monday night, an overtime Hack 1 thriller in a rivalry game. And then last night, the game for the Hack 2 title. Let's talk about the Hack 2 title game. Lewisburg, Warrior Run, their second time around last night. What were your biggest takeaways from that game?
Well, the biggest takeaway was I was slightly surprised by the outcome, to be honest. I didn't give Warrior Run the credit that it deserved and that it certainly earned last night. There's a couple reasons for that. Lewisburg, on the one hand, Lewisburg had a 7-game win streak, was really, I thought, not only building momentum, but kind of finding itself as a team that developed a really good depth over the course of the season. I think the Green Dragons can go about 8 or 9 deep with just quality varsity basketball players, and can do a number of things. I don't want to necessarily call them specialists, but they have 3-point players, they have bangers, they have scorers and tough girls inside and out. So I liked where Lewisburg's program as a whole was headed for a game that was going to decide a division title. Conversely, with Warrior Run, the only time I'd seen the defenders was in a difficult matchup with Shamokin, and the defenders did not show well. And I thought if that's the barometer that maybe they weren't going to play against what I considered, better than average competition, maybe this mixture, this chemistry of Lewisburg playing well and Warrior Run maybe not being up to snuff would harm them. What transpired was Warrior Run just playing, staying close, not letting Lewisburg get too far ahead. There was a 6-point lead for Lewisburg at one point. There was a 5-point lead in the third quarter, a 3-point lead in the fourth quarter. But Warrior Run always making a play or two to keep the game from getting anywhere near double digits, that margin. And ultimately, at the end, just playing one possession at a time, making the plays it had to make to win, whether that be a defensive rebound. One of the exceptional statistics I thought was the fact that in the fourth quarter, Lewisburg had 11 one-shot possessions.
Wow.
2 of them were makes, 9 of them misses, and 9 defensive rebounds, one and dones that Warrior Run was able to execute with the combination of senior Avery Bieber and freshman Emily McKee on the inside. Just great want to and desire in rebounding the ball. Beyond that, offensive plays, got to the foul line, made baskets, always kept the game up tempo, kind of enforced their will on Lewisburg and put Lewisburg in a position where it had to play from behind and really couldn't find an answer.
Now, a lot of the Warrior Run games I've seen have been a little on the lower scoring side.
Mm-hmm.
Is that their style? I mean, I think last night Lewisburg had 33 points, and there was a game earlier where Grace Kelleher had that many on her own.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that because the first half of the game was a 13-12 score, and it was really, I don't want to say it was, ugly rugby style basketball, but in asking Lewisburg coach Brent Sample after the game, what did he prefer? Did he think that suited his team better for that condition? He said no, he would have preferred the up tempo that he got in the second half. What I believe is Warrior Run would just is willing to play either style.
Okay.
If you want to play a low scoring game, if you want to keep the score into the 20s or 30s, Warrior Run will do that. But also proved last night that it can run a little bit, get out in the open court, make transition baskets, but also make some perimeter shots. They played a sophomore, I believe, or a junior, Jordan Hartman, in the starting lineup for the first time. She knocked down 3 threes for them, which were big over the course of time for when they came.
Wow. A big game for the district title Tuesday night. A big game for playoff hopes Monday night between Schick and Selinsgrove, the Cross River rivals. Schick with a big fourth quarter rally, then wins in overtime. I mean, that just sounded like a crazy game from talking to you about it when you got back Monday night.
It was, and both coaches kind of shrugged that and said, Shikellamy and Selinsgrove, what do you expect? And I guess to a point that's true, but I think it goes a little deeper than that. Like you said, it was for playoff berths. Mm-hmm. Selinsgrove could not afford the loss. Selinsgrove was teetering with 11 losses. A 12th would eliminate them from playoff contention. Shikellamy needed the win to get to 500 and kind of hold out hope of getting to 11 wins to ensure they'll finish at 500 and earn a district berth. So it really was, there really was that underlying motivation of, if we, as seniors or veteran varsity basketball players, want to play in the postseason, this game, is vital for that. And that's what we saw really in the fourth quarter. Shikellamy, which I don't think I'm going out on a limb by saying it's not a good free throw shooting team, shot 13 of 16 in the fourth quarter from the foul line, and not only made those free throws, but made the plays to get to the foul line.
Sure.
Protected the basketball, put itself in position in the paint or what have you to earn those trips to the line. Their defense forced turnovers. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about that game. I mentioned Marley Sprinkle, the Selinsgrove senior, who I don't think, again, that I'm going out on a limb. I think she'd agree that she hasn't had the season she would like to have, and a vast majority of the reason for that is how she is defended, the attention that she draws on defense. She was face guarded by Brooke Snyder, a Shikellamy sophomore, throughout Monday's game, and most teams have defended her that way, doing anything they can to keep Marley Sprinkle from beating them. But when it came right down to it, she put herself in a position to get to the foul line, down 3 with no time left on the clock, and made all 3 baskets after being fouled, trying a 3-point attempt at the buzzer. And just with nobody around her on the foul line, Kurt, just her standing there singularly, made all 3 foul shots, one after the other, to tie that game and send it to overtime. Yes, Shikellamy won the overtime period 8-2. Yes, they eliminated Selinsgrove from playoff contention and put the Braves in a spot where they might earn the playoff berth. But just great must win situation. You talk about must win situations in sports. Both teams played like that was a must win and showed it.
What I was really impressed with is Selinsgrove gets knocked out of the playoffs, and still. You talk to Marley Sprinkle afterwards, gives nice, mature, reasoned answers, and that beyond basketball, I like to see that from the kids we cover. What are you looking forward to over the next couple days? I know we got the Hack tournament and the Schuylkill League tournament next week, which will be fun to watch. But between now and then, are there any games you have your eye on?
Well, Thursday night is Danville, a one-loss team, playing at Southern Columbia, which I believe is 16-3.
4 now. They lost
16-4?
to Loyal Sock Tuesday night.
Very well. But you want to talk about 34 wins between two teams on the same basketball court. That makes for a compelling matchup. Beyond that is the chess match between two very good friends, Danville coach Steve Moser and Southern Columbia coach Bill Callahan, who really ignited, fostered, if you will, the Shamokin-Danville rivalry when Bill Callahan coached Shamokin for 9 years, and the Heartland won was always through one or the other teams. Those teams were the teams matching up in the regular season games because you knew that might decide a division championship. So those two are going to meet up again in a Hack crossover game on Thursday night. So I'm interested to see how that plays out. Mm-hmm. Two good teams, two coaches who are very good friends with one another. I'm really interested to see that. The other one will be on the other side of the weekend, and that's Lourdes at Shamokin. And that, if people can remember back to the holidays when there was a holiday tournament, that should have been the matchup for the Shamokin tournament. Coming down to the end, it was postponed to the very end of the season. So we'll see that neighborhood rivalry on Monday night, the Shamokin Indians and Lourdes Regional. Lourdes, which just earlier this week clinched the Schuylkill League Division II championship and will be appearing in the Schuylkill League playoffs next week.
Okay, that's our look at girls basketball. I'm going to be joined by Todd Hummel next, talk a little boys basketball. All right, and now I'm happy to welcome in Todd Hummel, talk a little bit about boys basketball in the Valley.
Did you miss me?
I sure did.
You did not.
I didn't even notice you weren't here last week.
Probably not.
So, boys basketball, let's talk about Danville. Still cruising along, 16-game win streak now?
Yeah, 16-game winning streak. I had to think of what day it was. Thursday night, only 1 point win in overtime over Shamokin. Probably their toughest test since their last loss back in the beginning of December to Crestwood, who turns out is pretty darn good. They're ranked in 5A now in the Daily Adams State rankings. I think it was an interesting game just for some of the playoff implication. I think there's a pretty good bet that Shamokin and Danville will probably meet at some point again in the district playoffs. I think it proved to Shamokin that they can play with, beating Mount Carmel and then hanging around with Danville till overtime. Probably proved to Shamokin, who, in their 7 losses, they've played teams like Loyal Sock, Pottsville, they went down on the road to Allentown Central Catholic. They didn't really play real well in those games, and playing well against these teams will only help Shamokin. And it's the first time Danville's been tested. And I talking to Dyson Harward, who tied the game with a tip-in at the buzzer. The Ironmen really felt that they needed that game just because they really hadn't been tested. I think, jogging my memory, I think when I wrote this story, I think Loyal Sock was within 11, and somebody else was within 14 of Danville in this streak, and then everything else has been nearly 20 points or more. And that kind of continued on Monday night when I went up. They played a Central Columbia team who entered the game at 15-4. Mm-hmm. It was 10-7 midway through the first quarter. Danville went on a run, and all of a sudden it was double digits. Central did a real good job of getting it back to 9 in the third quarter, but Danville rolled again, and I think one of the most interesting games of the next week and a half is that possible Hack final next week with which I'm sure we'll talk about more next Wednesday, but between Danville and Loyal Sock. And another thing about that game on Monday night was a senior night for this Danville group, who starts 4 seniors normally. Fifth senior Colin Holcomb started in that game. And I talked to Shane Kozik a little bit, one of the seniors and 1,000-point scorer, what it was like to be on the court with some of those seniors for one last time.
Right away, I think we were firing off all cylinders. We got Dyson going early, and we took advantage of them starting their big guy out. And, we've been playing together for so long, and it was so nice, for a senior night to finally come. And we were really looking forward to that.
It really seemed you really tried to get Colin involved early, too.
Yeah, so Colin did a great job getting involved early. I think they're keen on Dyson, but so... Next guy up, that's our motto.
And I was going to say, Colin's probably somebody that sacrificed a lot for this team this season, just not playing as much. It must have been, how nice was it for the rest of you guys to kind of get him involved in that?
It was rewarding, everyone has a role in the team. His role in this team, he stepped up. When he was in the game, he did a great job, and we couldn't ask for anything more out of him. So.
Well, what was kind of the defensive plan on Dominic tonight?
Yeah, we just had to stop Dominic Coop, get a hand in his face. We knew they were shooters, so we tried to make him put the ball on the floor, and I think we did a great job. And I don't think we scored in the first half.
So I've got 2 follow-up questions. First, what did Shamokin do last week to make things so tough on Danville?
Shamokin can throw. Shamokin doesn't have much size, but Shamokin can throw 9 athletes at you to play full court man-to-man defense, which is what the Indians did against Mount Carmel to kind of control that scoring offense, and what they did against Danville. Obviously, Colin Bowers, Mason Filarski, and Joey Mosser are their scorers, but that other group of kids like Tariq Mosser, Jaliki West, Nafis Love, to name a few, Matt Shikatano, one of the other starters, all play real good defense and makes it hard to get real easy shots against the Ironmen. And the other big thing was the big difference between the first game and the second game is how much Harward means to Danville, just rebounding wise almost. Because that first game, he wasn't in foul trouble and they really dominated the glass and they ran away with that game in the second half. This game, he didn't play much. Saddled with foul trouble. I don't think he got to double-digit rebounds, and Shamokin was able to hang around. And that's the biggest difference between those two teams. Is I think the skill level guard-wise and some things are the same, but Danville just has so much depth inside that Shamokin doesn't have, especially length, more height than anything else.
So not really something other teams can replicate when they play Danville.
Not without brooms.
And what is Danville doing so well? 18-2, 16 straight wins, and most of them not close, as you pointed out.
Probably the most, Shane Kozik and Peyton Riley have played for 4 years. They got to the state playoff, played pivotal roles as freshmen on a state playoff team. It's just a good group of athletes at Danville now with, I think we probably see this last year out of them. Before, but Harward got hurt, and it kind of took away that depth inside. Now, this year, there's some freshman kids in that Danville team that aren't playing a whole heck of a lot that would probably play for a lot of the other Division I teams. I mean, that's the other thing Danville has is I sometimes don't wonder if Lenny has Coach Smith has a problem with too much depth, just finding minutes for everybody.
Yeah, you think about Danville, and they have guys that come in at the end of the game like Patrick Yost and Jack Smith, and in some of those blowouts, they're putting up 7, 8, 9, 10 points.
Well, I made this joke Monday to their JV coach. I mean, all these kids are playing JV, and I think one team has been, again, Crestwood's been within 4 points of the JV team, and Loyal Sock was with 9, and they're winning games by like 40 and 50 points because. Wow. These kids that could play varsity or ended up playing 20 minutes in JV because, they got to get their time somewhere,
Let's talk a little bit Mifflinburg. They have a big game against Shamokin Wednesday night, so by Thursday still, you have to check that out. But they've quietly been pretty good, I think.
Yeah, maybe the biggest surprise to me just because of what they lost last year. Again, another team that's not very big but has, not tall, but Austin Raymer's a good inside presence. Isaiah Valentine has, over the last month, really stepped up his scoring, and I think this is another team that really relies on its defense and has really rounded into shape. And that first Shamokin game was an overtime game out at Shamokin, so this will be kind of interesting. This is for second place in Division I. I think Shamokin is the better team, but Mifflinburg plays so well together. They play well at home. I'm kind of interested to see how these, once we get into the 4A playoffs, how some of these matchups go. Just, I think Danville and Shamokin, from what I've seen, are the two best teams, but, Mifflinburg certainly has a shot, and so do, Montoursville is really good too, and I haven't had a chance to see Montoursville, and that was another big game this week. Shamokin knocked off Montoursville on Monday. So, Shamokin's 4 losses are Lords, twice to Loyal Sock, and now to Shamokin, so...
Wow.
Montoursville's not a bad basketball team either.
And then, as you mentioned, next week we've got the tournaments. We've got Tri-Valley League, which will have Millersburg, Greenwood. Who's the really good one? Halifax?
Halifax is the top seed in the Eastern Division. Millersburg is the 2 seed. Then Greenwood's the 1 seed in the West. And Juniata and East Juniata are still fighting out for that other seed. And they play Friday night, I believe. Okay.
And then we've got the Hack tournament. We've got the Schuylkill League tournament. So next week's going to be a big week to wrap up league play. Transferring from where are we? From boys basketball to college basketball. But before I get in that, a little college football news. In between segments of the podcast, we learned Bucknell hired a new football coach, Dave. I'm going to call him Cicchini. Was the former coach of Valparaiso, played All-American wide receiver at Lehigh, so familiar with the Patriot League. I'm going to go to the press conference Saturday, so make sure to pick up Sunday's Daily Item, learn all about him. Transferring from football to Bucknell men's basketball team, first place by themselves now. They're 8-2 in the Patriot League. Lehigh's 8-3. They're coming off a dominant win over Lafayette with 31 points from Kimball McKenzie. A couple big games coming up for them. They're at Loyola tonight. Then they host Boston on Saturday and Lehigh Monday on a national TV game. So a fun weekend coming up for the Bucknell men. And Bucknell women just keep rolling. 8 wins in a row, 9-1, tied for first in the Patriot League with American. They're off Wednesday night, host Lafayette Saturday. So a nice doubleheader at Soika Pavilion.
12-2, right?
12 and 2:30.
12 and 2:30.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, there's almost never. We talked about this before. I've been here this is my 3rd basketball season, and Bucknell's good all the time.
On the men's side, Bucknell's always kind of been really good, even mid '80s on.
Wow.
And Aaron's really turned that program around. Coach Russell's really turned that program around, and I think both places expected it, or both teams expected this at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And like we talked a little bit about, I guess it's been 2 weeks. It's just kind of interesting to see. I talked about the men might hitting a lull, and they lost that next game, but they did kind of bounce right back from it. Have played well again last week, and that's the only thing sometimes that I don't like about this Patriot League schedule sometimes is to get that CBS network game in. Mm-hmm. You're playing Saturday and Monday.
Right.
And it'll be interesting to see how their legs are Monday night against Lehigh. I'm assuming Lehigh probably has a game Saturday.
Sure.
And it's probably a little harder for them because they actually have to get on a bus and come up here, and both of Bucknell's games are at least home this weekend.
Right. And Lehigh played this past Monday's national TV game and got upset by Colgate. So it's a tough game. And Susquehanna men on a little bit of a roll, won 3 in a row. They're now in 3rd place by themselves in the Landmark Conference at 7-3.
And big improvement for the Riverhawks this season. I'm kind of, they've been in so many conferences. That Landmark Conference tournament should be a fun one too, because it really seems like the men, Scranton, Catholic, and Susquehanna have really match up evenly, and any one of those 3 could probably win the tournament. And I think Catholic comes to town this weekend, don't they?
Yeah, Catholic, 4 o'clock for the men, 2 o'clock for the women, doubleheader at Hout's Gymnasium on Saturday. Mike was in here last week talking about a big game last Wednesday with Scranton coming, and Susquehanna beat them in overtime to sweep the Royals, and I know that's kind of the conference rivalry game.
Yeah, and that's that doesn't happen often. Maybe the Scranton men under most people know the Scranton coach from his ties at Bucknell.
Cool.
Danzig, Coach Danzig, his kids play there. Carl Danzig, the youngest one's now a freshman for Scranton. They played at Abington Heights, won a state title last year. Scranton's always good. Maybe a little more dominant women's basketball. I think Mike Strong retired like 3 years ago with 700 wins,
wow.
And I just saw Trevor Woodruff, who's their coach now, won his 100th game in like 3 years. So Scranton's always been a tough matchup. But that, when you look at the Landmark Conference, though, that like I said, I think Susquehanna certainly has a legitimate shot to get back to the national tournament for the second time in 3 years. And I think, after the way last year went, I don't know if that was, something we thought at the beginning of the season.
Right. Yeah, last year it seemed like they had a real trouble replacing that senior class from 2 years ago. But
for obvious reasons.
Yeah, great senior class led by Stephen Widelick.
Yeah.
But the upperclassmen are playing well, and those freshmen and sophomores have really been playing key roles for the Riverhawks. Susquehanna women, up and down all season. A little bit of a down stretch again. Lost 2 in a row. Dropped to 3-7 in conference play. They're hosting Drew tonight. Josh Funk's going to be there, so pick up Thursday's Daily M to read about that, and then hosting Catholic on Saturday. So maybe this 2-game home stretch can help them get back on an upward trajectory and the season in a good way.
And it's been kind of the same story for them. When they score, they play well, and it's kind of sound obvious, but that's been their big thing. They don't shoot well all the time, or most of the time, and when they don't shoot well, they struggle. They're holding teams to, you got to hold teams to 40 points sometimes the way they shoot, and that's real tough in a 40-minute game.
All right, that's our look at college basketball, and that's our podcast for the week. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next week.
See ya.